I don't think it's too much of a stretch to call this the favorite or my favorite sunset photo that I've ever taken. And this didn't come about by accident. There was actually some planning involved here, sort of. So I was driving from Oklahoma to Nebraska, and I left Oklahoma at, I don't know, about noon or so, and this was in I think late January of 2019, maybe early February. In any case, I was driving to Nebraska, and if you've ever made that drive, any drive of any length of time across the plains, you know that you see vast stretches where it looks like this, where it's just plains. But it's not as easy as you might think to get a sunset photo like this. And there's one thing in this photo that just sells it for me, that really kicks it up. Not even a notch, but I'd say several notches. And that's the wind turbines. And you can barely see them if you're looking at the photo on a small screen. You might have to go to Flickr or go to Weekly 50 and click through to the Flickr version where you can see a much larger version of this photo. And you'll see way in the distance these wind turbines. And each one of these turbines is about 250 to 300 feet tall. And those turbines lend a sense of scale to this photo that I don't think I have in any other sunset photo. It helps illustrate the vastness of this prairie. And without those turbines, this just looks like a sunset, like any old sunset. But I'm actually on a hill here. I'm just north of a town called Odell, Nebraska. And what you might be surprised at if you drive around in the plains is that scenes like this that really set themselves up well for a sunset are not actually that easy to photograph. You see things like this. Like you look out of the car window and you see just like endless stretches of plains with kind of undulating hills slowly. But you don't get a picture like this or a scene like this where I'm actually on a hill, at the top of a hill, looking out kind of downward almost. And so if you picture this really broad, very low hill with the horizon stretching out in all directions, that's what I'm looking at here. And that particular makeup where you have a vantage point from the top of a very low hill, or a very vast hill, I guess, with something way in the distance like these wind turbines to give a sense of scale. That particular set of circumstances is not always easy to come by. And I was so thrilled as I was driving north on whatever highway it was, and I saw this scene. And I stood there for probably 15 minutes and just watched the sunset. And I stopped my camera way down. I had my 70 to 200. I actually could have shot this with a 50. I shot this at 70 millimeters on a full frame, which is almost identical to a 50 millimeter lens on a crop sensor camera. So I didn't even need a special set of gear to take this shot, but it was nice to have access to a variety of focal lengths and apertures. I shot this at 1/60th of a second. Having the stabilized lens helped, and I wanted to get a decently long shutter speed with a low ISO, because I also wanted the aperture to be really small. I wanted everything to be really sharp and in focus. And with a large aperture, you wouldn't have got those sun rays that you see in the foreground. So everything really kind of lined up for this. And I probably took about 100 pictures from this exact spot using various focal lengths and just watched the sunset. And it was so cool to see that happen, to watch the sun go down, eventually disappearing behind the horizon on a scene like this, and then continue the rest of my drive in the dark. I mean, it's just this really cool sense of, I don't know, like this feeling of emptiness in the prairie. And there's no other cars going by on this highway. I might have saw two the whole time I was there. So it was so cool. And I have this titled Midwest Sunset because this is what I picture in my mind when I think of a sunset in the Midwest. and it's all about those turbines that really does it for me, that having those in the background to really sell that sense of scale. And so I think the lesson for me and for anyone else who might be taking a photo like this is find a way of giving your viewers that sense of context. If it's a sunset, great, that's awesome. Take that sunset, but find a way to add something to that illustrates some way that your viewers can kind of place themselves in the scene. And this is something I didn't do on a recent photo when I had a sun rise. I removed any sense of context. So in a sense, this is kind of the opposite of that. I don't think that this is the best sunset photo I will ever take, because I'm sure there's another one out there, but it was really cool to take this.